I reserved a $3,900 venue for my son's birthday. When we arrived, the banner read, "Happy 7th Ava, my sister's kid." Mom shrugged. "We thought you'd understand." My son whispered, "It's okay, maybe next year." I walked out without a word, ended every deposit, and by midnight, the entire family group chat exploded. I want to tell this story the right way. Not the fast version. Not the version where I look like the hero in the first paragraph and everyone else is a cartoon villain. I want to tell it the way it actually happened, which means starting a long time before the party, and a long time before the banner, and a long time before my son learned to say it's okay in a voice that sounded like he was trying to protect me from something. I want to start with who I was before I knew I had to stop. I am 34 years old. I am a project manager. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment with a son who is obsessed with dinosaurs and a color-coded spreadsheet habit that my coworkers find either impressive or alarming depending on the week. I drive a 2018 Civic. I meal prep on Sundays. I set 3 alarms for important mornings and wake up before the first one. I have been the reliable one in my family for as long as I can understand what that phrase means. It did not start as a burden. It started as identity. I was the oldest. My parents were young enough when they had me that they were still figuring out how to be people while simultaneously figuring out how to be parents. I was a cooperative kid. I sat still in restaurants. I did homework without being told. When things were tense, I went quiet. I learned early that making yourself easier to manage is the first form of love a child learns to offer. When I was 9, I started making my own lunch for school every day. Not because I had to, but because I'd noticed my mom was running late on the mornings she tried to do it herself. I started getting up 15 minutes earlier, leaving the lunch kit by the door so she'd see it on her way through the kitchen. She noticed after a week. She said, "Good job." I kept making it. When I was 16, I got a job bagging groceries and paid for my own school supplies, haircuts, the elective fees my school required. I was proud of this. I told myself it was independence. In some ways it was. In other ways, it was an audition for the role I was going to play for the next 2 decades without anyone writing it into a contract. By the time I was in my 20s, being reliable had calcified into an expectation so embedded in the family structure that no one talked about it anymore. People don't narrate air, they just breathe it. My parents didn't say call Mark when there's a problem. They just called me. My relatives didn't say we can ask him, he'll figure it out. They just asked and assumed. I co-signed phone plans. I put car repairs on my card just until the tax refund comes. I arrived with towels when apartments flooded. I handled things. That word, handle, was used about me more than any other. Like I was a tool. Useful, available, stored in a convenient location. This is how you become the reliable one. Not through a single decision, but through 1,000 small ones. Each one making sense in the moment. Each one adding another brick to the wall that eventually surrounds you. My sister is 3 years younger than me. She was born 6 weeks premature. Small, red, urgent. The way some people enter the world like they are already late for something. The first weeks were frightening. She was in the NICU. My parents slept there in shifts. I stayed at my grandmother's house eating cereal and watching cartoons. Not fully understanding, but understanding it was serious. And that being serious meant staying out of the way. She survived. She thrived. By the time she was 2, she was loud and pink-cheeked and magnetic. The kind of toddler that strangers comment on in grocery stores. My parents had walked through enough fear with her that when she was finally safe and home, they loved her with the intensity of people who had almost lost something. I understood this. You don't resent a person for the circumstances of their birth, but there was a tax, a slow, invisible one. My mom called her my sensitive one. That phrase did a lot of work in our household. It meant that when she cried, we investigated the cause. When I cried, my mom said, "Don't make this about you." Her piano lessons were an investment in her development. My soccer fees were maybe next month that sometimes became never. When she had a bad day at school, dinner paused and turned toward her, warm and attentive. When I had a bad day at school, I learned to mention it quietly after dinner and accept a brief response. None of this was stated. None of it was policy. It was just the weather of our household, the invisible tilt of a floor that everyone walks on but nobody discusses. She grew up beautiful. She's on Instagram now. Soft filters, organic aesthetics, captions that are 3 words and an ellipsis. Her daughter always has a bow bigger than her head and matching sets and the kind of birthday parties that get posted to 3 platforms before the cake is cut. She never had to try very hard for any of it. Some people are built with certain frictions removed, and she was one of them. She and I are not close. We are not enemies. We are the particular kind of not close that comes from growing up in the same house, but in 2 very different versions of it. My son is 7 now. He was born when I was 27, in a relationship that was mostly good and occasionally not. We split when he was 3, which is the best time to split if you have to. Early enough that the kid doesn't remember the 2-parent household. Late enough that you've figured out co-parenting. We did it well. We coordinate. At handoffs, we are warm enough that strangers sometimes assume we're still together, which we both find slightly funny. My son is the clearest thing in my life. He's a specific person, loud about dinosaurs, quiet about emotions, fascinated by fish and bridges and anything involving a countdown. He asks servers what their favorite dinosaur is and waits patiently for the answer. He says please with both hands folded like a tiny diplomat. He has a gap in his front teeth that makes his smile look like a key missing a tooth. He asked me in February if he could have a real birthday party. Not a small thing at the apartment, a real party with cousins, a bounce house, a cake with blue frosting frosting that stains your tongue? I said yes. I opened the spreadsheet that same night. I researched venues for 3 weekends. I visited 4. I rejected one for shabby bathrooms, one for parking, one because the manager was condescending in a way that telegraphed how they'd handle problems on the actual day. The 4th one had a manager named Marissa who walked me through everything twice, answered every question without making me feel difficult, and sent a follow-up email the next morning with a subject line that said, "So excited to celebrate with your son." The package: front room, 11 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon, exclusive use, bounce house in the adjacent yard, catering, pizza, juice boxes, a sandwich platter for the adults, total $3,900 even. I paid a $1,500 deposit in February and scheduled the $2,400 balance for 1 week out. I had been saving since January 1st. I labeled the account Max's Day and contributed every payday without exception. I packed my lunch every workday. I canceled my takeout subscription. I skipped the weeknight drinks I used to do twice a month. Small adjustments, individually meaningless, collectively significant. I ordered the custom banner the 3rd week of April. Navy blue background, block lettering, a brachiosaurus in the lower right corner because he'd spent 20 minutes explaining to me that brachiosauruses were underrated and deserved more attention. I approved the proof. It shipped in 5 days. I told 4 people about the venue. My buddy Nate because he has a truck, my son's mom because co-parenting means transparency, my mom because she asked, and my aunt because she ghosts RSVPs unless you nudge her twice. I gave my mom the address, the room name, and the start time. I should not have given her the room name. 7 days before the party, my phone rang at 7:22 in the evening. It was my mom. "Hey," she said, "how's my grandson?" "Good," I said. "He's doing homework." "What's up?" "Nothing, just checking in." She paused. "Hey, what's the room situation at that place you booked? Is it a big room?" I gave her the basic dimensions. She asked if it had a yard. I said yes, enclosed. She asked about parking. I told her it was in a commercial plaza, plenty of spots. She said, great, that's great. We'll be there with bells on." 2 days later, she called again, 7:43 in the evening. "Hey, your sister's park permit fell through," she said, before I even got through hello. "What park permit?" I said. She'd been planning Ava's birthday at the park. You know, the one near the community center. They dropped her application because of some paperwork issue. She's been so stressed about it. I said I was sorry to hear that. "You know how she gets when plans fall through?" Mom said. She pauses. "Hey, when you said the room seats, how many people?" I told her again. She said, in the way that means she's writing something down. 3 days after that, a Thursday, she called a 3rd time, 8:11 p.m. My son was already in bed. "Hey, I just need to know the venue you booked. It's Marissa who manages it, right? What's her last name?" I stopped. "Why do you need her last name?" I said. "Oh, Jenna wanted to look at it for a different event. I might have mentioned it. You know how it is?" I said I didn't have her last name handy, which was true. I didn't recall it off the top of my head. "No worries," she said. "I'll look it up." She hung up. I stood in my kitchen holding my phone and looking at the refrigerator for about 30 seconds. Something had pinged in my chest. Not alarm, not quite. More like a note out of tune. A small recognition that sat in the back of my mind and whispered something I didn't want to hear. I chose not to hear it. 2 days later, a group text arrived. My mom, my sister, my aunt. A burst of pink heart emojis, balloon emojis, a confetti icon, then a link to a Pinterest board titled Ava's Lucky 7. Pastels, balloons, a cloud cake with rainbow sprinkles. I stared at it for a long time. I typed, "Looks cute. See you Sunday for Max's party." My sister replied immediately, "We wouldn't miss it." My mom sent a thumbs up. I put my phone down and went back to the document I was reviewing for work. I had the folder open on my second monitor. Party logistics. Everything confirmed. Everything organized. I told myself the ping in my chest was nothing. I was wrong. I stayed up until 11:45 the night before the party. Not out of anxiety, or not only anxiety. I stayed up because there were things to do, and I wanted them done. I ironed his shirt. It's a cotton shirt with a T-Rex on a skateboard that he picked himself at a store in March, pulling it off the rack with the confidence of someone who has found exactly the right thing. I ironed it carefully, checking the collar, hanging it on the doorknob of his room so it would be the first thing he saw when he woke up. I loaded the car with the things I was bringing. The banner, rolled in a tube, labeled with a marker. The box of party favor bags I'd tied with orange string because Max had said orange felt fast. The extra napkins I'd bought because my family reliably underestimates how many napkins a children's party requires. The electric pump for the decorative balloons. The card from his mom that she'd dropped off that afternoon. I confirmed the vendor contacts one more time. I texted Nate to confirm he was coming in the morning to help set up. He sent back a thumbs up and a dinosaur emoji. I put the lighter on the kitchen counter next to the candles because I knew someone would ask me in the last 3 minutes before the singing started where the lighter was, and I wanted the answer to be on the counter. I went to my son's room to check on him around 10:30. He was asleep on his side, one arm curled under his pillow, the Lego dinosaur he'd built last week sitting on the nightstand watching over him. I stood in the doorway for a moment. 7 years. 7 years of 2 bedrooms and packed lunches, and the specific terror of watching someone small be sick, and the specific wonder of watching someone small learn things. 7 years of pickups and drop-offs and bedtime and permission slips and the small serious negotiations of raising a person. He deserved a good day. I went to bed at 11:45. I set the alarm for 6:30. I woke up at 6:12. He was already awake when I came out of my room. He was at the kitchen kitchen table in his pajamas with a bowl of cereal, which he pours with a level of ambition that consistently exceeds his motor control, so there was cereal on the counter. He looked up and said in a voice still thick with sleep, "Is today the bounce house day?" "Yes," I said. He ate in silence, which is unusual for him and means he's thinking hard about something. After a few minutes, "Do you think Tyler can come early to help set up?" Tyler is his best friend from school. I told him Tyler's parents were bringing him at 11. He nodded seriously. "Okay, I'll save him a good spot." He went to get dressed. He appeared in the hallway a few minutes later in the T-Rex shirt, shoulders back, chin level, the posture of someone who is dressed correctly and knows it. He turned a slow circle in the kitchen. "Do I look fast?" he asked. "The fastest," I said. He examined himself in the small mirror by the door, adjusting a wrinkle on the sleeve that I was fairly sure only he could see. We left at 10:15. The drive was quiet and comfortable. He had the passenger window cracked 2 inches and held his hand out into the airstream, tilting his palm to catch the wind. He does this on most car rides. I've never asked why. Some things belong to a kid without explanation. He asked if the pizza would be the kind with the bubbly crust. I said yes. He said, "Good, that's the kind that's worth it." I felt the particular brightness that a good morning gives you when you are not yet old enough to distrust it. My chest was light. The sun came in sideways through the windshield. We were 8 minutes away, and everything was organized, and every small thing was ready. I pulled into the lot at 10:28. My son spotted a crow on a parking divider and stopped to watch it with complete attention. "Come on, buddy," I said. He said, "It's looking at me like it knows me." I said, "Crows are very smart." He thought about this. Then he came. We pushed through the glass doors. The lobby was warm. Pale wood floors, track lighting, the faint smell of a cleaning product that was trying to smell like nothing. A tall plant near the reception desk that was either real or a very committed fake. I could see the front room from the lobby. The doors were open, 2 sets of them, wide, inviting. The room beyond was already lit, already set. I walked 3 steps before it registered. The color was wrong. The room was full of pink and rose gold, the soft saccharine palette of someone else's vision. Balloon clusters and blush and champagne. A table runner that caught the light with some kind of foil. A cake on a pedestal table near the back wall. A 2-tiered affair with a glitter 7 on top. Garlands of paper flowers in pink and white looping from the windows. And the banner, stretched across the far wall in rose gold script with white backing. "Happy 7th, Ava." I stopped. My son bumped gently into me from behind. He looked up, then looked ahead, following my eye line. The banner had a little princess crown over the exclamation mark. A woman I didn't know was near the window arranging cupcakes on a tiered stand. She had a catering apron. She glanced over when we came in, did a quick assessment, and said, "Are you the uncle?" Her tone was breezy, the way you say something when the situation is already settled and you're just filling in the details. I didn't answer. My son said, from beside me, in a voice I'd never heard him use before, "Dad, that says Ava." "Yes," I said. "It does." My mom came in from the hallway to the left, the one that led to the restrooms and the caterer's entrance. She was carrying a gift bag and wearing the expression she wears when she has already decided how things are going to go and is just waiting for everyone else to catch up. "There you are," she said, as though we had been the ones keeping her waiting. "We thought you'd understand." I looked at her. Then I looked at the banner. Then I looked at the woman with the cupcakes. Then I looked at the room. Every inch of it, someone else's celebration, someone else's palette, someone else's name in gold script on my wall. My sister came in from behind my mom, sweeping through the door in a seafoam sweater, and the particular energy of someone who has successfully executed a plan and is now available to receive congratulations. "Oh my gosh, you're here," she said, airy, warm, her voice carrying the bounce of someone entirely at ease. "Isn't it perfect?" She gestured around the room with both hands like a presenter revealing a prize. My son's hand found mine, small and steady. He looked up at me. His face did something very careful. He was reading me. "It's okay," he whispered. "Maybe next year." He was 7 years old and already managing my emotions for me. He was 7 years old and already knew the sentence for when something that was supposed to be his gets taken. He had already filed it somewhere in his understanding of how the world worked, available and ready, like a tool you keep around because you've needed it before. I felt something shift, not crack, not break. Something older and more structural than cracking. The way a foundation settles when it's been asked to hold too much, and the settling changes the shape of everything built on top. I let go of his hand and walked to the manager's desk. There was a different person there than Marissa, someone covering, I assumed, a young woman with a venue polo and a clipboard of her own. She looked up when I approached. Something about my expression made her look quickly, then look again. She reached under the desk before I had said a word. She set the clipboard on the counter and slid it toward me. "Your name is on the front room reservation," she said quietly. I said yes. She pointed without touching. "Front room, exclusive use, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Standard event contract." My signature at the bottom, a clean blue ink signature I'd written with the pen Marissa had left on the counter the day I came in to pay the balance. My card number on file, every line filled. She looked at me steadily, not pityingly, more the way a witness looks, present, attentive, giving me room to do what I was going to do. I said, "Thank you." She said, "I'm sorry for the confusion." I said, "It wasn't your confusion to manage." She nodded. She kept holding the clipboard out and I took it. I stood there for a moment holding the clipboard and looking at my name and my signature and the phrase exclusive use and thinking about what those words meant and what they had apparently not meant to everyone involved in this situation. Then I walked back into the front room. The room had filled slightly in the few minutes I'd been gone. My aunt had arrived. I could see her near the window, already with a drink, already in conversation with one of my sister's friends. My niece was running near the entrance to the bounce house yard in a pink party dress, trailing a streamer. She was laughing and didn't notice me. She was just a kid. She was just a 7-year-old in a pink dress at a party. None of what had happened was her fault. My son had stayed near the lobby. He was standing just inside the door, watching. "Mom," I said. She was across the room, rearranging a cluster of balloons that didn't need rearranging. She turned with a practiced smile, the kind that is already positioned to absorb whatever is coming. "You need to take it down." She tilted her head. "One slow degree. Mark, don't make a scene." "I'm not making a scene," I said. "I'm asking you to remove a banner from my son's party room." She sighed, the sigh of someone who has prepared for this conversation and decided in advance to find it exhausting. "It's not just his room. We needed the space. Jenna's permit fell through, you know that." You thought you'd use the room I paid for," I said, without asking me. "We thought you'd understand," she said again, "like the second time would sand off the edges of the first. You're so organized. You always figure something out." My sister stepped in from my left. She'd been near the cake table, straightening the topper, and she approached now with the smooth efficiency of someone who has been listening and waiting for her cue. She put a hand on my arm, briefly. Warmth performed rather than felt. "Oh, come on." She was so excited. "We didn't think you'd actually mind. It's basically a joint party. Win-win." I looked at her arm on mine. Then I looked at her face. "Who agreed to that?" I said. "Mom said you wouldn't mind." She said it without flinching, like it was a reasonable answer, like a third party's assumption was sufficient contractual authority. "Mom said you wouldn't mind." She heard herself say it. She adjusted slightly. "You know how sensitive she is. When the park canceled, she was devastated. She cried for an hour. We had to do something." There it was, sensitive. The word that moved mountains and money and apparently venue reservations. "You've always been the generous one," my mom said, in the tone she used when she was offering me a description of myself as an incentive to be that description. "Don't change now. It's just a banner. It's not worth making a scene over a banner." I looked at my son. He was still near the door. He was watching me with that particular steadiness, the careful stillness of a kid who has learned that the best thing he can do in certain moments is be very small and very quiet. He'd already said it's okay twice. He was 7 years old. He was wearing a dinosaur shirt he'd chosen himself. He had been asking about the bounce house since March. He shouldn't know the sentence for when something gets taken from him. He shouldn't have it ready. He was 7. I looked at my mom. I looked at the rose gold banner. I looked at the glitter 7 on a cake my son had never ordered. "Okay," I said. My mom's face shifted into relief. My sister exhaled, turning back toward the table. My aunt topped off her drink. The room resumed its orbit. I went to my son. I crouched to his level. "Come on, buddy," I said. "Let's get some air." He came without argument. His sneakers made small, careful sounds on the pale wood floor as we crossed to the lobby. "Mark," my mom called after us. Her voice had a new texture, something between authority and uncertainty. "Don't be childish." I didn't answer. Not because I had nothing to say. I had too much. I had 30 years of things to say, and none of them would land the way I wanted them to in that particular room on that particular morning. I needed words I could live with afterward, and those words required a different kind of space than this. There was a small aquarium near the lobby entrance, rectangular, about knee height, set on a low table beside the reception area. I hadn't noticed it when we came in. My son went to it immediately, pressing both palms against the glass the way he approaches all animals, attentive, patient, entirely without self-consciousness. There was an orange fish inside. One. It looped in slow ellipses near the bottom of the tank, touching one corner, reversing, heading toward the other. It had the measured, unhurried quality of something that has no concept of urgency. My son watched it for a long time. "Is it happy?" he asked finally. "I think so," I said. "It's doing what fish do." He considered this. He pressed his nose lightly against the glass. The fish completed another loop. "Do fish get lonely?" he asked. "I don't know," I said. "Some scientists think they do." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I hope it has friends in the back." He stepped back from the aquarium. He looked up at me with a directness I find both straightforward and sometimes difficult to meet. "I'm okay, Dad," he said. "I'm really okay." "I know you are," I said, "but you shouldn't have to be." He thought about this. He nodded, slowly, in the manner of someone filing a point away to consider later. I took out my phone. I called the venue's main booking line. I had the number saved in my phone under Party Logistics, next to Marissa's email address and the caterer's contact. The line rang twice. A coordinator answered. I gave the booking number. She found it quickly. I said I needed to cancel. She paused. "Cancel the full package?" "Yes," I said. "The catering order, the bounce house rental, the safety host, the room extension I'd added in February. All of it." She said she'd have to document the reason for internal records. "Unauthorized modification of the reserved space," I said. "The room was set up for a different party without my knowledge or consent." She made a note. She walked through the items one by one, reading them back to me. Catering, confirmed canceled. Bounce house, confirmed canceled. Safety host, confirmed canceled. Room service extension, confirmed canceled. Remaining balance charge will not be processed. Deposit status will be reviewed. I said, "I'll be disputing the deposit with my card as well." She said, "I understand. I'm sorry this happened." I said, "It's not your situation to apologize for." I hung up and called my credit card. The automated system got me to a dispute specialist in about 90 seconds. I explained the situation: reserved venue, unauthorized room modification, exclusive use contract violated. The specialist asked for the venue name and booking dates. I had the contract screenshot in my phone. I read the contract number. She said she'd flag it for review and that I'd hear within 3 business days. I thanked her and hung up. 11 minutes. I checked the time on my phone. It had been 11 minutes from the moment I started the first call to the moment I ended the second one. 11 minutes to undo 4 months of planning, 5 months of saving, and 30 years of being the person who absorbs things quietly so other people don't have to absorb them at all. I stood in the lobby for a moment with my phone in my hand and my son next to me watching the orange fish make another loop. I put my phone in my pocket. The day, I thought, is not over. It has just changed shape. On the way out of the lobby before we reached the glass doors, my son looked up at me. "Can we still get blue frosting cake?" he asked. "2 slices," I said. His face shifted into something warm and resolved, the expression of someone who has just received exactly the information they needed. He pushed through the door. I followed. In the parking lot, he said, "Can I get a Lego set?" I said yes. He said, "This is actually turning out pretty good." I said, "Yeah, I think it is." He kicked a pebble. He watched it skip across the asphalt and come to rest near a painted line. He considered it for a moment with the scientific attention he gives to things he's decided are worth studying. Then he climbed into the car. I drove. We went to the park 3 blocks from the apartment, the one with the long wooden slide, the rope bridge that sways when you run across it, and the field behind the trees where the grass gets long enough to feel hidden. He ran the bridge at a walk, then faster, then at a full sprint, until it swayed so much that 2 teenagers on a nearby bench looked up from their phones and watched, and laughed when he made it across and pumped his fist. We went to the slide. He demanded a countdown every single time, standing at the top with both hands on the rails, waiting with exaggerated patience. 3, I said. 2, 1, T-Rex. He launched. He went down maybe 20 times. He never stopped laughing. We found a bench in the shade. I had the Lego kit in a bag from the car. A dinosaur set I'd bought 2 weeks ago and was saving for later. He opened it with the precise, controlled excitement of someone who is trying very hard not to scatter the pieces. He built for about 40 minutes, asking occasional questions about which part connected where. When he was done, he looked at it. "The legs are backward," he said. He considered this for a moment. "That's a mutation." He said it with finality. "Mutations are interesting." He held it up so I could see. The dinosaur stood at a slight angle, its backward legs giving it a lurching, heroic quality, like it was striding into something difficult and didn't care. "It's great," I said. I meant it. He named it Parkosaurus. Then he pulled out the grocery store cake. Small, single-layer, blue frosting the shade that stains permanently. He ate the corner piece with complete commitment. He got frosting on his cheek and left it there. "Why aren't you wiping it off?" I asked. He looked at me like the answer was obvious. "It feels like war paint," he said. I laughed. "The easy kind. The kind that arrives because something is genuinely funny and you are genuinely present for it." The sun moved through the afternoon. The shade shifted. A toddler somewhere squealed. The ordinary chorus of an ordinary Saturday. Unremarkable and sufficient and entirely ours. My phone went off at 3:04 p.m. I'd put it face down on the bench. When I picked it up, there were 43 missed calls. 43, which is a number that does not happen by accident. It happens when multiple people are calling simultaneously, and each one calls back after going to voicemail. It happens when a group of people has decided you owe them something, and they have designated the phone as the collection mechanism. My mom, 11 times. My sister, 8. My aunt, 4. My dad, twice. Several relatives I see at holidays. 1 unknown number. I put the phone back in my pocket and watched my son introduce the Parkosaurus to a pigeon. At 5:18 p.m., I checked the group chat. It had been active since 12:47 p.m., moving in waves. First, the disorganized emotional burst, then the briefings as others arrived and got caught up, then my mom's long paragraphs, which she writes when she's trying to establish a narrative. My mom, 12:47 p.m. "I don't know what has gotten into your brother, but what he did today was cruel and selfish, and I am deeply hurt." My sister, 12:51 p.m. "Ava is asking why it's not her party anymore. What am I supposed to tell her?" My aunt, 1:02 p.m. "I have never seen behavior like this in this family. You need to call your mother immediately." My dad, 1:16 p.m. "This is not how we handle things. You owe everyone an apology." My sister, 1:33 p.m. "My friends were there. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was?" My mom, 1:44 p.m. "When you were born, I told your father we had a special one. So calm, so responsible. I never imagined you would grow up to be this kind of person, to ruin a child's birthday over a room." I read that last one twice. I thought about the contract at the manager's desk. Front room, exclusive use. I thought about the banner in rose gold cursive. I thought about my son standing near the door in his T-Rex shirt, managing my emotions for me at 7 years old. I could see what was happening in the chat, and it was not what it appeared to be. The messages were not a family processing guilt. They were a family constructing a story where they hadn't done anything requiring guilt. The original facts, "we used your reserved room without asking," had been replaced with a more comfortable narrative. Mark overreacted. Mark ruined a child's birthday. Mark has become cold. I did not reply. I closed the chat. She arrived at 7:09 p.m. I was washing dishes when the doorbell rang. My son was on the couch watching a nature documentary about prehistoric oceans, which he had requested specifically because he wanted to see if the program got the mosasaur proportions right. He did not look up when the bell rang. I dried my hands. hands. I looked through the peephole. My mom, she was standing on the doormat with her purse held at a careful angle and her expression arranged into something between wounded and determined. The combination she deploys when she has decided to be reasonable and also needs you to know how much the reasonableness is costing her. I opened the door. I left the chain on. She looked at the chain. She looked at me through the gap. "Mark," she said, "can we talk?" "You can say what you need to," I said. From there, her jaw tightened briefly. Came, relaxed. "Fine," she said. "I want you to understand how this has affected your sister." I waited. She was blindsided today. She didn't expect you to. She didn't think you would actually cancel everything. She thought you'd be reasonable. I thought you'd be reasonable. I looked at her. "I was reasonable," I said. "I was 11 minutes of phone calls and a credit card dispute. That's extremely reasonable." "That's not what I mean." She shifted her purse. "What I mean is that there was a way to handle this that didn't involve scorched earth, that didn't involve canceling the catering and leaving us without food, that didn't involve—" "Mom," I said, "I booked the room. I paid for the room. My name was on the contract. You went to the venue, told them you were part of the booking, and had the room decorated for a different party, without calling me, without asking, without a single conversation." She opened her mouth, closed it. "Jenna's park permit fell through," she said. "We were in a bind. You have always been so capable of handling things. We thought you'd find a solution." I let the silence sit for a moment. "You assumed I would give up my son's reservation so your daughter's party could use it," I said. "And when I didn't, the story became that I had ruined everything. Not that you had taken something, that I had ruined it." She looked at the floor, then back at me. "That's not how it happened." "It's exactly how it happened," I said. "I have the contract. I have the receipts. I have the confirmation numbers. I am a project manager. I keep things documented." She was quiet. "You used to be so generous," she said. Her voice had dropped into something softer, which meant she was switching tactics. She was entering the register that was supposed to make me feel like I was losing something valuable if I didn't comply. "You were always the one who found a way." I bragged about that. "I told people that about you." "I'm still generous," I said. "With people who treat my generosity as generosity and not as a resource, they can allocate without asking me." Her face moved through something. Confusion, hurt, and then briefly, something that looked almost like recognition, like a person catching a glimpse of something in a mirror they hadn't expected to see. Then it closed again. "I don't know what's happened to you," she said. "I'm clear," I said. "That's not the same thing as changed." She stood on the doormat for another few seconds. She said, "Your sister is going to want an apology." "I'll take that under advisement," I said. I closed the door, gently. The latch clicked without force. I stood on my side of it for a moment. Then I went back to the kitchen and finished washing the dishes. The group chat had reached 200 messages by 11:47 p.m. I know because I checked it once before I tried to sleep, the way you sometimes prod a bruise to confirm it's still there. I did not read all 200. I read enough to understand the shape of the evening my family had spent in my absence. The messages had evolved in the way these conversations do, which is to say they had not processed anything but had reorganized it into a form they found more comfortable. The original facts had been smoothed over and replaced with a usable narrative. My aunt had argued I'd been influenced by my son's mom, who she's never liked. My cousin Ginny, who speaks once a year at most, weighed in with something about children first, which I found rich. My dad had tried diplomacy and then just sided with my mom, which is what he does after the first hour of any conflict. My sister posted a photo at 8:13 p.m. The venue's front room, the rose gold banner across the back wall, my niece smiling in her pink dress, a slice of glitter cake on a plate in the foreground. She captioned it, "Family is everything." I stared at that photo for a moment. Then I put the phone face down on the nightstand. Before I turned off the light, my son appeared in the doorway. Pajamas, rumpled hair, the small Lego dinosaur in his hand. "You're still up," I said. "I was thinking," he said. "What were you thinking about?" He came to stand beside the bed, considering. He said, "If you could name any dinosaur, what would you name it?" I said, "The Maxosaurus." He smiled, the gap-toothed smile that takes over his face before he realizes how complete it's become. "That's a good name," he said. He stood for another moment. Then, "Dad, can 7-year-olds have pancakes for dinner?" "Tomorrow, yes," I said. He considered this. He nodded. Then he went back to his room. I turned off the light. I did not go to the family meeting my mom called for the following Tuesday. She sent a photo of the living room. Chairs in a circle, the configuration she uses when she wants a conversation to feel balanced while actually being orchestrated. She captioned it, "Your choice." I left it on read. I did not call my sister. I did not compose the thoughtful email or the careful text or the phone call where I tried to be fair to everyone, including myself. I had done those things many times before. I knew what they accomplished. What I did instead, I set up an automatic transfer to my son's college fund. I had been meaning to do it for months. I logged in and set it for the first of each month. Modest, consistent. That's how things get built. I made a list on a sticky note and put it on the refrigerator. It said, "Things we have because we're not paying other people's bills." I wrote the park, the slide, pancakes, blue frosting, Lego. My son added extra sprinkles in large, uneven letters. I booked a camping trip for August. I'd been wanting to go for 2 summers. I found a site with a small lake and booked it before I could think of a reason not to. I blocked my family on Venmo, not dramatically, practically. Requests had been arriving in that channel disguised as notifications, and I was done being surprised by them while I was doing other things. My sister texted privately 10 days later. 3 paragraphs containing the phrase, "not my proudest moment," which is as close to an apology as someone gets when they don't quite believe they owe one. She said she hoped we could move forward. I wrote back, I hope you find a good venue for her next party. Give her my love. I meant both sentences. My mom called on a Sunday 3 weeks out. I answered, which surprised us both. She said, I think I rely on you too much. She said it carefully, the way someone says something they've rehearsed. I expect things from you that I don't expect from other people, and I don't think that's fair. I said, I think that's right. She was quiet. Then, are we okay? I said, we're at the beginning of okay, which is different from okay. She said she could work with that. I said, so could I. Before she hung up, he really did look fast in that shirt. I said, he really did. The party was not what I planned. It was smaller and less organized, and there was no bounce house, and the cake had no candles because I'd left them on the kitchen counter where I put them, so someone would know where they were. But he went down the slide 23 times by his own count. He named a dinosaur species. He decided his frosting was war paint. He watched an orange fish loop in slow circles and wondered if it had friends. He got to be 7. All of 7. Without being managed or adjusted or told to wait or to understand or to take the smaller room or to say it's okay when he didn't mean it. I think about what my son knows at 7. He knows that when someone offers you a party and then takes the room, you say it's okay because you have already learned that this is the safest response. He knows this, and he shouldn't, and the fact that he knows it is something I carry. I also know this. He went down the slide 23 times, and every single time he asked for a countdown, and every single time I gave him one, and every single time, the moment before he launched himself, he looked exactly like a kid who has the whole afternoon ahead of him and nowhere else to be. 3, I said, from the bottom of the slide. 2, 1, T-Rex. He went down the slide. He was still laughing when he hit the bottom. That was his birthday. That was the whole thing. The real thing. The part that mattered. By midnight, 200 messages in the group chat. I left them unread. My mom's last text, you ruined everything. My son, still up, frosting dried on his cheek. Dad, can 7-year-olds have pancakes for dinner? I said yes.